Hello and welcome to another episode of ohmTown. It's now going to be referred to as the daily news show at ohmTown. And I'm Mayor Watt. I'm the guy that runs that site right there. I was going to say show, but that site right there is ohmTown.com. And there is where I aggregate a lot of news from across the internets. And it gets funneled into 6 main categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. If you're in my chat, thank you for coming. Hope you enjoy the show. Let me know if my chat's acting weird, if you do throw a message in there. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. A message that should have posted didn't post there, but posted somewhere else within Twitch. So I'm not sure exactly if something's broken or not. So what I do each day at 6 o'clock Eastern is I go through a sample of news that my aggregator has gathered. Each one of these channels that I talk about are intended to be live 1-hour shows or longer, depending on the content and quality, and at least 1 hour of show and interaction with people. And they're all categorized within these 6 that you see here. If you're in the podcast, then obviously you're not going to see it. You'll have to go to either YouTube or to ohmTown.com or look at the VODs on twitch.tv/ohmTown to see what I'm precisely talking about. But I basically am planning 50 shows, 1-hour shows a week. And when they're not actually live, then they're replaying some segment of the show itself. How this works is ohmTown reaches out and aggregates news from various sites. And every time you click on the ohmTown logo, it'll refresh. Obviously, you can just refresh the page and it will repopulate as well. If you didn't know, the first article that was aggregated just before this refresh was that Ms. Doubtfire is being delayed until April. So, and just in case you were wondering if you were going to be able to go there early, no, you're not going to be able to watch Mrs. Doubtfire's Broadway reopening until April. And I had just refreshed that. So there's actually only 2 new articles, which it's kind of hit or miss. Today seems to be an odd news day, but I'm going to go through the news with you real quick. And should last about an hour. Might take a little bit shorter, might take a little bit longer, depending on how I get sidetracked. I practice a thing called associative thinking, so sometimes we might end up far afield from what the initial article was talking about. That said, let's get on with the show. The first article is in the Mobile channel, and it's USC's rise at US sea levels. Let me just not paraphrase this. US sea levels to rise at a faster pace than in past 100 years. Oceans along the US coastline will rise faster within the next 3 decades than they did in the past 100 years, bringing more flooding to coastal cities such as New York, Miami, according to the latest projections. So let's click this link and we'll take you over to phys.org. Brian K. Sullivan is the author of this. Basically it says sea levels are expected to rise as much as 12 inches, 30 centimeters by 2050, according to a report led by the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And then it says, while the amounts vary according to region, the inundation will lead to more coastal flooding. And that is unfortunate. And we see this happening because global temperatures are slowly rising. Sea temperatures are slowly rising. At some point, it's supposed to be a self-reinforcing process. There's an actual term for it, but I've forgotten what it is. But it's going to end up basically like an avalanche. It's just going to power itself, and we'll see even more marked increase in global temperatures. And weather in and of itself will become dramatically more dangerous. Then again, maybe we can mitigate this. We can change our ways. We can stop flooding the world with greenhouse gases. We can find new technologies to eliminate it in some way or lower the amount. We shall see. Everybody has a part to play, I suppose. Not everybody is doing even a little bit. Some just feel like we can't do anything about it because it isn't me at home, recycling my goods that's causing this problem. It's something else. We'll put it to you that way, because I don't know about all of the machinations. And if I pull somebody out of the crowd, I'm sure that they'll be upset about it. But it's definitely not just, a bunch of people at home. It's definitely industrial processes, which we all benefit from, but you can't say one without the other. You can't be saying that it's not a benefit and that we need to stamp it all out, but then still benefit from it. So go over to phys.org, read that article. U.S. sea levels rise at a faster pace than in the past 100 years. And just, you have to understand that it's not just the U.S. It's the U.S. coastline that they're talking about. But if sea levels are rising, it isn't just going to be right here off our coast. The next article is in the Daily News Show, which this hour-long show really is. Like the last channel, this is intended to be a 1-hour show. Mobile is supposed to be a 1-hour show. State officials, bird flu found in 4th Indiana turkey farm. My news isn't necessarily U.S. centric. It has a lot of U.S. stuff. But I'm located in the U.S., and unless it really impacts in a more global way, we tend to be a little bit more local, I suppose. But like rising sea levels, it isn't necessarily just the U.S. In this particular case, it is Indiana. A second commercial flock of turkeys came back as presumptively positive. They make it sound so good. Presumptively positive. State officials say a strain of avian flu has been found at a 4th commercial turkey farm in southern Indiana. This is by the Associated Press. Let's see. Another possible case was found about 5 miles away in Greene County earlier in the week. 2 previous cases were found in adjacent Dubois. A 10-kilometer circle has been established around the latest farm in Greene County. 13 commercial poultry flocks within the new control area are under quarantine and will be tested regularly. So without putting too fine a point on this, flus and illnesses and whatnot are common, and they either get immunized from it or they are destroyed. Something has to happen. It's part of nature. Obviously, you can't really get clinically pure without doing amazingly good at isolating the flock and basically being in lab conditions. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I've got an article that's kind of speaks to that, but let's keep going. Illnesses are going to happen. Avian flu is kind of like a brand name in illnesses. And so when it pops up, they talk about it. They being everybody talks about it. Anybody that's a stakeholder, a stakeholder in the food industry, the news industry, the turkey industry, health and safety. Everybody just ends up talking about it, either hyperlocal or when it goes into the press, then people like me talk about it. But let's keep on going. This next article is in the Mobile channel. Peloton's new CEO on the tough road ahead. Barry McCarthy replaced the floundering company's the floundering company's founder as chief executive this month. In an interview with DealBook, Mr. McCarthy discussed what he plans to do differently. Let's click this link. It'll take us over to New York Times. This article was written by Andrew Ross Sorkin and Lauren Hirsch. Barry McCarthy replaced the floundering company's founder as chief executive this month. In an interview with DealBook, Mr. McCarthy discussed what he plans to do differently. I urge you to go over to the New York Times and read the entirety of this. I won't go through the whole thing, but the reason why I clicked on it is because there was a CEO swap from the founder to one that has kind of a greater understanding, perhaps, let's say, of the concerns of what's happening with Peloton. They got a lot of flack recently, and people were riffing off of it with shows about people having heart attacks either on the treadmill or on the bike. And here it says, Barry McCarthy, the 68-year-old former chief financial officer of Spotify and Netflix, took over as chief executive this month after Peloton's charismatic founder, John Foley, announced his resignation. An early employee at Netflix, Mr. McCarthy worked closely with one of its founders, Reed Hastings, to develop the subscription service's revolutionary streaming business and to take the company public in 2002. He did the same thing, similar, innovative. I'm not sure about innovative, but being able to read the writing on the walls. When he became Spotify's chief financial officer, he pioneered the audio company's advertising strategy, including its push into podcasts. And we know where that's going. At Peloton, Mr. McCarthy's immediate task is to right the ship. The company's chief financial officer said it wanted to save at least $800 million annually. On the same day, Peloton announced it would lay off 20% of its corporate workforce. This is something that I've mentioned previously. The C-suite basically has one objective, and that's either to grow or mitigate the losses. Grow the company or mitigate the losses. If it's a downtrend, then you want to mitigate the losses, right the ship, turn it around, and head back in the right direction. And sometimes that takes laying off a large part of the workforce. It's never easy. It can be expensive in and of itself. There's a lot of goodwill that's lost. There's a lot of reputation that's lost. There's a lot of perceived value by investors when you terminate a large cohort of people. That said, extending the runway so that it doesn't collapse saves the remaining people. And I'm not happy with the idea of having to let people go. But sometimes it is fiscally prudent to do so. I never look forward to it, but I've never had to let go 20% of my workforce on a scale of Peloton or Spotify. So good luck to Peloton. I think my concern about Peloton is and I don't mean this ironically, is I don't think it has legs. I think you hit an upper echelon of the number of people that are willing to take on the fiscal burden of purchasing a very expensive bike, and the monthly fees that are associated with it, and the dedication to it to see both a physical return on your investment in your health and a return on your investment based on how often you're actually riding that bike. If you did this as a New Year's promise to yourself to get healthy, you've already failed, right? Pretty much. That's a lot of New Year's Day stuff falls apart within the first 2 months, first quarter at least. So good luck. Let's see if you can write this and turn it around. This is not a subscription of entertainment. this is a commitment to a person's health, right? So it's not like you can just go to your computer or go to your TV and strike up Netflix or turn on your phone and listen to Spotify. This is something that you have to be internally motivated to go use. And I just think that there's a very finite number of people that are willing to commit to that level of engagement. So good luck again. This next article is over on Mobble. That's the Mobble channel. Again, I hope to turn that into an actual show. U.S. lifts temporary ban on avocados from Mexico. The ban was issued last week after a U.S. inspector was verbally threatened in the state of Michoacan in Mexico. So I'm going to click this link. This article was written by Eduardo Medina. And basically, somebody was threatened, an inspector was threatened in Mexico, and it shut down the trade, allowing exports of the fruit to resume today. So the ban had been issued on February 11th after a verbal threat was made to a U.S. inspector working in the country that prompted the USDA to warn that the suspension would remain in place for as long as necessary to ensure the appropriate actions are taken to secure the safety of inspection service personnel working in Mexico. Yeah, I'd have to say that I wouldn't know what I would do if I was tasked with inspection in another country and threatened. It's you are at the whim of an entirely different country. It's not like you're going to get teleported. This isn't Star Trek. You're not going to get teleported out of there to your safety. So it's pretty ballsy to go back and deal with that kind of stuff. But USDA is appreciative of the positive collaborative relationship between the United States and Mexico that made resolution of this issue possible in a timely manner. Details of the threat made to the employee were not made public. It was significant enough that it shut down trade. I guess that's you don't hurt the messenger, that's for sure. That's what you don't do. But threatening somebody, I guess it's the economic version of an act of war. So this next article is over in The Word in Tech. Epic Games is making hundreds of temp testers into full employees with benefits, which is quite the divergent process, seemingly in today's workplace. Epic Games is hiring its U.S.-based contingent workers full-time and with benefits, Epic confirmed to The Verge. The Fortnite developer is extending the offer to quality assurance testers, as well as other quote-unquote eligible contract-based employees. I'm going to click this link. This article is written by Emma Roth over at The Verge. And you don't really see this. You see quite the opposite, right? Just like the Peloton case, the Peloton article, they let go 20% so that they could extend their runway. Epic Games is turning their quality assurance testers into full-time employees with benefits, which to me, that's amazing. Kudos to Epic for extending that roof, that umbrella, that safety over a cohort of formerly not full-time employees. Now, benefits go a long way to building respect and loyalty within both the enterprise and the employees. I say it separately because the enterprise can get more people, can get different employees, but it's difficult for employees to know where they stand in an enterprise. Almost all states don't have employment contracts per se. They have, we're all at will states. And so you can be fired with no reason at all, and you can quit with no reason at all. Reputations, on the other hand, follow you around, but giving somebody the ability to get benefits and be full-time gives them something tangible to really hold on to. So I appreciate Epic Games making that call. Good for them. But we'll see. I'm reality driven, even though I like talking about a lot of science fiction and fantasy stuff. I listen to audiobooks about science, sci-fi, and fantasy, and I watch Star Trek and play video games, computer games, pretty much exclusively. I try to have a nice work-life balance, let's say. But when I look at this and I see quite the opposite action by another company, you just know that it's quite possible for a company to change its direction in a heartbeat. So this sounds good. This looks good. Go over to The Verge and you can read the rest of this, talking about Epic Games making hundreds of temp testers into full-time employees with benefits. I think that's great. This next article is in the Tabletop Nights channel, which talks about tabletop gaming. This is Meta RPG Adventure Terrorbane launches on April 1st for Nintendo Switch and PC. The little snippet that my aggregator grabbed was, "The date is not a joke." Well, it kind of is. So let's click this link and see what it's all about. So Adam Vitale, publisher Crunching Koalas. Okay, so Adam Vitale is the author of the article over on RPGsite.net. And it says, publisher Crunching Koalas and developer Bit9 Studio have announced that Meta, quote unquote, Meta RPG Adventure Terrorbane will launch on April 1st for Nintendo Switch and Steam. It's the fourth wall-breaking meta RPG adventure where a game developer tries to make a classic-style JRPG while squashing bugs. And they have a video over there. I don't typically play the videos from websites that are aggregated. I want you to go over to rpgsite.net and watch the video from there. Or, of course, you can always do a search on YouTube. And hopefully it will pull up rpgsite.net actually hosting this on their channel. But it says that it's a meta RPG adventure. So go check it out. Come back. Let me know what you thought of it tomorrow. We'll be here at 6 p.m. as usual. The next article is over in the Smack Talk channel. This is where we talk about Apple products and competitors in relation to Apple, not necessarily the, one better than the other than, within the context of Smack Talk. Yeah, Apple's better. The scandal over NSO Group's Pegasus spyware was uncovered by a single fake image file mistakenly left on an activist's iPhone, a report states. A discovery that prompted international outcry over privacy. In July, it was reported that spyware known as Pegasus was used to hack smartphones, including iPhones owned by journalists, activists, and others of interest to some governments around the world. So let's click this link. This is an article over on appleinsider.com written by Malcolm Owen. Essentially, if you have an unlocked phone and you download something and it encourages you to make additional steps, do additional confirmations, unlock or activate other additional functions, you're probably being compromised. Even on an iPhone, a locked iPhone basically is not going to get hacked. But an unlocked one where there are people that are interacting with the phone, it's going to be able to have data exfiltrated from it. It's just the nature of the beast. As I've said in previous episodes, the only secure computer is one that's unplugged and sitting in a closet somewhere. And even then, if I break into your house, I can steal your computer and quote unquote exfiltrate that data. I was once asked if, a 2 terabyte hard drive was driven from one location to another, what is the data transfer rate? And I said it was 60 miles per hour because that's how fast I would be driving it from one location to another. Well, that's the speed of your hack. If I break into your house and I take your hard drive, I'm going to be leaving at 60 miles an hour so as not to draw attention, right? And then there's no cybersecurity issues. I'm not going to get detected. Random thought. But anyway, while dozens of smartphones were found to be successfully hacked by the tool, an investigation at the time determined that more than 50,000 phone numbers were of interest to users of the tool. Pretty fascinating, right? So what I tell people is trust but verify. Make sure you have backups. If anything seems out of place, seems odd, things are slow, data seems to be changed, or something has disappeared, or you were out of touch from your device, and you think that you might be a target, then you should probably wipe your phone and re-image everything from the cloud. Your files will be downloaded again, but the products, the items that you download, the apps and stuff like that will be re-downloaded are going to be okay, unless the breach is inherent within the app. And then it's really it's an Apple concern, because the everything should be audited for security. Obviously, there are 0 days and other issues. Yes, I understand that, but there's supposed to be a process to make sure that applications don't overreach their particular framework, their particular envelope, their particular sandbox. 6 months later, it was discovered that a fault in Pegasus meant it left a single malicious file on the device. The file was later determined to be direct evidence that Pegasus was produced by NSO Group. It was a game changer, said Citizen Lab researcher Bill Marshak. We caught something that the company thought was uncatchable. Oddly enough, there seems to be a lot of, there tends to be forensic transfer. Just like biological forensic transfer, there is digital forensic transfer. There's either network telltale signs or on-device telltale signs. Finding them is really tough, perhaps. But that's kind of like a no open doors mentality that I've got, where I don't allow any communication to take place without something notifying me. Right, I've got a hardware firewall, I've got software firewalls. Something should be notifying me if there's something going on. And you should be like that too. You really should be. Everybody who has an electronic device, connects to networks, travels from one place to another, whatever it might be, you just never know. I could be using a device that spoofs your own access points and allows you to attach to this spoofed access point. But we can get into that later if you are also interested. Come back to the chat and talk to me and ask me questions, and I'm happy to talk about it. Otherwise, this show can end up being hours and hours and hours longer than I intend it to be, I suppose. But let's keep going. This next article is in the Mobile channel. And eating lab-grown meat and the return of segmented sleep, the week in narrated articles. So this says 5 articles from around the Times narrated just for you. So I'm going to click the link. It takes us to New York Times, and it has a bunch of articles in it. I clicked this because of the eating lab-grown meat and return to segmented sleep ideas. And so what you're going to end up doing is going over to New York Times. The link to this will be in the description of the podcast and in the description on YouTube and on ohmTown.com for the podcast. I'll put it in the description for the VOD as well. But these are essentially articles that have been converted into Audible format that you can listen to via the website. And it says here, tissue engineers and scientists in several countries are trying to find a commercially viable way to transform animal stem cells into marbled Wagyu steak, briny oysters, or sushi grade salmon. And I've been told time and time again that there's no such thing as sushi grade salmon. It's just good salmon. Others have said, no, there's sushi grade salmon, but I just like good sushi, whatever it is, as long as it's, fresh and doesn't have lead in it or something. Now, this brings me back to that first article that I was talking about where turkey is infected with avian flu. These level of infections can actually happen within even this commercially grown, engineered, lab generated products. They're just destroyed before it reaches the point where somebody can say, oh, look, the sky is falling. There's so much production in the United States that we could probably feed all of the nations homeless and hungry. The problem there is both distribution and abuse, where people will treat it more like it's takeout instead of a resource that's going to people that are needy. And others will have ethical concerns about providing our extra food to, basically like a feel-good mechanism, social, whatever. But for instance, I've gone to another country where I witnessed the same thing, a lot of homeless, hungry people, and a lot of food being thrown out. And I said, well, why don't you guys do this? And they said, well, we used to, but people would pack the buckets with all of like a bunch of food that actually was for customers, but citing all of the stuff on top as being, well, this is the extra stuff, but that's not really what happened. There was abuse. And I'm not saying that will happen, all the time, but it happens. But we have more than enough to feed everybody in the United States. Our production is just really good. Now, if we convert this into lab grown stuff and we go vertical, much like vertical growing now with plants, we could increase the density even more, because a lot of our chicken and steak and pork and other products have large grazing patterns, and it's tough. It's tough to be very dense and efficient. But when we remove the environmental concerns and that wobble where something could get sick or somebody could bring an illness in, you increase that density dramatically. And right now it's really expensive. So in time, as we adopt it and accept essentially lab grown foods, we may be able to solve at least the US hunger problem, and then export that technology or import it if somebody else does it. But I'm all for this. I would prefer a lab grown environment if it is proven healthy. And we've got years and years, hundreds of years of research into the genetics of plants, where it hasn't proven in any concern. And even within fish and beef and chicken, we've never found major problems with GMO crops. If there has been something, I would like to know what the ratio is, because I have yet to see anything substantial. But again, it's just me. It's my take. I'm more than open for discussion. I'm not fixed in my ways. I base all of my understanding off of the prevailing information that I have at hand. So if you think that I am one way, like you may think that I'm just an idiot that I can accept GMO products. Correct me if I'm wrong. Show me that I am wrong. And use science, use information, use fact, because what I'm talking about is my perception, and I'm showing you the news. I will change my ways if there is fact and evidence. The next article is over on the Daily News Show, which this is. Cancel this project. Price tag of Trans Mountain expansion nearly doubles. One campaigner called on Canada's government to instead, quote unquote, put all of our energy and political will into a just transition that leaves fossil fuels in the ground and supports people, communities, and workers. So I'm going to click this link. It'll take you over to commondreams.org. The article is by Jessica Corbett. And the Trans Mountain never made any sense to build during a climate crisis. And apparently it's doubled its price tag. The price tag has skyrocketed to $21.4 billion. That is a lot of global warming there. This is the moment to cancel the project outright. And this is kind of what happened with another two oil pipeline and mining operations here in the States. It's messy. And by messy, I mean, everything associated with it was messy. It was costly. It was impacting the environment regularly with leaks and cost overruns. And there needs to be a different way, a better way. And I don't think that mining or drilling for oil or mining coal is really the way to solve this energy crisis. We need to continue to enhance our scientific understanding of energy solutions like solar and wind, geothermal, nuclear, and find applicable ways to leverage it. Draining what's underground and fracking and tearing everything out of the ground and then basically walking away from it when it has been drained leaves what I would agree here is a dumpster fire for future generations to have to clean up. Because the machinations of Earth are not just isolated like that. An oil leak in a lake somewhere is going to impact the water table and the life around that lake for generations, or just end whatever might be there forever. It will never recover because it's basically a poisoned well. So there's more to it, of course. But let's continue on. We have some more news. The next article is in the Mobile Channel. Study examines accuracy of arrest data in FBI's Nibrs crime database. So Nibrs is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. As more police agencies transition to the FBI's Nibrs for crime reporting, a study of one state's data found that a design flaw in Nibrs, the timings of arrests and human factors can lead to discrepancies. So I'm going to click this link. And this is an article over on phys.org written by Sharita Forrest. It has a person that was part of the research team, Theodore P. Cross, in the picture. And it says, when authors of the current study compared the statuses of a statewide sample of 480 cases in NIBRS with data they had collected directly from the Massachusetts jurisdictions where the crimes occurred, they found that about 16% of the cases incorrectly indicated in NIBRS whether arrests were made or summonses were issued. Overall, in 84% of the cases, the NIBRS data matched that of the law enforcement agencies. But there were some factors that led to errors, one being delays in arrests and another being the use of a single data field to enter both arrests and summonses. So it's basically about the accuracy of the reports in NIBRS. And when it comes to crime reporting, it actually has some pretty expansive implications, both on the social aspect of it. If there's a lot of numbers related to certain types of crimes in certain geographic regions, then property values decline. People don't move there. The value and taxation changes. It's a whole mechanism, and it's not directly tied to NIBRS, but just crime data points in general. And not to mention resources leveraged when there is reporting and it's used by federal agencies. There could be deemed a problem somewhere, and so money and activity is leveraged in a different direction, perhaps. However, slightly more than 13% of the cases in the sample were false negatives that incorrectly recorded in NIBRS that they had not been resolved by an arrest or summons. The researchers' analysis showed that the majority of these false negatives occurred in cases where a summons was issued rather than an arrest made. And it continues on. But like with all of this, I'm drawing your attention to the source, the people who write it, and some context of it. I would urge you to go over and read this article. And again, the link will be all what I've neglected to do for this last since the beginning of this episode, this show, is actually post the links. So I'll start posting the links again, and I'll play catch up here in a minute with the rest of them. Lawyer says everything evaporated overnight after attending Capitol riot. This is in the Law Nerd channel, where we talk about law and sort of anything having to do with law. I'm looking for a host or a co-host that can talk about this from the legal standpoint, whereas I'm just a layman discussing the law and my perception of it. I'm not an attorney. The article is over in abovethelaw.com, written by Catherine Rubino. They say life comes at you fast, and that's something Paul Davis learned over the past year. You may remember Paul Davis. He's the former Associate General Counsel who attended the January 6th attempted coup and broadcast his participation on social media. And something that I have said previously, if you are going to commit a crime or potential crime, let's say, right? Because unless you're convicted, this isn't a crime, apparently. Breaking into the Capitol building is apparently not a crime until you're convicted of it. Record it and log into your Facebook account and make sure it's all documented very, very well. He then filed a lawsuit against pretty much everyone and their mother to overturn the 2020 election while citing Hobbit law. Because Gondor has no king or something. And then he got fired for a second time. So go over to Above the Law and show Catherine Rubino that you like the article. But we're going to keep on rolling through the news today. This next article is again in Law Nerd. A study finds lawyers no longer unique in their unhappiness. They're just as miserable as doctors. Don't worry, lawyers can still drink everyone else under the table, which is an interesting statement to make because I was going to make that statement. Stacy Zaretsky. It's kind of like an inside meme kind of a thing, inside joke meme kind of a thing with lawyers that they drink a lot. And it says here, let's see. Oh, it may not have much to it. Commenting on findings of the study he conducted with student Ray Noonan on lawyers' mental health and excess alcohol consumption. The whole article is apparently about that. Compared to other highly educated professionals and overall U.S. population, Listokin discovered that the percentage of lawyers with moderate to severe mental health issues is comparable to that of doctors, veterinarians, and dentists, but it's much lower than that of people without a college degree. Not sure where to take it. As far as problematic drinking is concerned, 5 or more drinks, 12 days or more each year. Lawyers are reporting excess consumption twice as much as others with advanced professional degrees. So problematic drinking is 5 or more drinks, 12 days or more each year. You can't drink more than 5 full drinks for 12 days. Okay, what's a drink? So a drink is typically a bottle of beer, a shot of whiskey, a glass of wine. That's kind of how that works. That's all one thing. Like, they're comparable to each other. So if you do 5 shots, 12 days or more a year, you've got a drinking problem. Got it. Okay, so this next article is over on the Continuity Report. CBS orders comedy pilots from Jenny Snyder-Urman, Andy Samberg, and the Lonely Island crew. Lonely Island crew is Andy Samberg and others. CBS has ordered comedy pilots from Jane the Virgin creator Jenny Snyder-Urman and Lonely Island crew Andy Samberg, Akiva Schaffer, and Jorma Taccone. So let's click this link. It's a project called Sober Companion. Yeah, wow. Let's see. Sober Companion hails from CBS Studios in association with White Sutton Street Productions, right? Association. That must be a typo with Sutton Street Productions. Meanwhile, Samberg and his comedy partners are working on The Hug Machine, a single cam comedy written by Sam Laybourne that is described as a family comedy with musical elements. Oh boy. Well, I guess we'll see. Maybe Andy Samberg is completely, the white whale, where it's anything that he does, that everybody's going to chase after him and get what they can if they make the right offer for him. I don't know, but a single cam comedy with musical, or family comedy with musical elements. Oh, that might be tough. Again, it's my perception. This next article is in the Continuity Report as well. And Despicable Me 4, set for summer 2024 by Illumination and Universal. You haven't seen the last of Gru and the Minions quite yet. Universal Pictures and Illumination announced Friday that Despicable Me 4 is coming to theaters July 3rd, 2024. And Steve Carell and Wig and Coffin and Cosgrove and Coogan will all be returning. So let's click that link and take you there. Jordan Moreau over at Variety. The last article was written by Jennifer Mass over at Variety. But basically, Despicable Me has this great following, and it's easy to watch, and it's fun. they've got a lot of marketing merch on the side for every movie and pretty much every iteration of Minions that comes out. If there is a Minion involved, then there's some merch that'll come with it. I don't know. I love these easily consumed movies. It's definitely not something like Inside Out, which is a little bit more cerebral for some. Kids love these movies. I love these movies. And it's a lot of, they basically nailed it on the head with what I was going to say, zany shenanigans. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch. You can go and check out that article over on Variety, written by Jordan Moreau, Despicable Me 4, set for summer 2024 by Illumination and Universal. The next article is, you might think that it's a more political one, but this is really a societal concern. People with insider information shouldn't be able to profit from them being in a position of responsibility in steering the country. It just, to me, it doesn't feel right. There's bipartisan support for this popular common sense reform, but there are people that witness firsthand the machinations before it becomes public at a level where they can act on it. And we have seen it. We have seen abuse in general when somebody has authority, right? We've been notified of the FBI, of police, of medical, of Congress people, and then when you're at that level of societal engagement and you step over to the next level, which is not in public benefit, but in private benefit, where people are exploiting their ability to parse records about somebody or track somebody or control somebody, we see abuse, right? So why is it so darn hard to extract stock trading from Congress people? Nobody should be able to benefit from their position. And the only way to find out if somebody has done something is for them to be audited. But they don't get audited like that. What's really interesting is that civil servants have to disclose all of their trades, but they don't get previous information as often as a big previous data, right? Congress people get massive amounts of data and they can act on it. Civil servants, they have to disclose a very low amount of money if they are investing in a stock versus an ETF. If they are investing in a company in one way or another, they have to disclose it. Congress, not so much. It's a paper form stuck in a box somewhere in a basement. The level of critical review is, to me, I don't believe it's known quite yet to what degree they see it. Auditors see it. This is an article over on New York Times, and it's by the editorial board, apparently. Americans are in a sour mood with their elected officials, blame the pandemic or inflation on Trumpism or stress or structural problems like inequality. But people do feel that the system, much less its leaders, are working for them. Yeah, they don't. People would rather quit because they're being abused and given pennies on the dollar for what they're actually benefiting the corporations that they're working for. And they can be fired simply because they're saying things like what I'm saying, which is Congress shouldn't be allowed to trade on the information that they get through the course of their business. I cannot, in my field, I cannot benefit from my position in any way, shape, or form. And if it is, it's an ethical breach and I can be fired. So do I do it? No. Would I have done it even if I had the ability to? No. Why? Because I'm an ethical person and I don't believe on trading on privileged information. I think it's wrong. Everybody should think it's wrong. This shouldn't be something that is political. It should just be common sense, just like the article says. The next article is the continuity report. And the headline is Oscar Streaming Guide, Where to Watch All 38 Feature Film Nominees. With Oscar nominations announced, see the full list of nominees at this link, and I'm going to click it here in a minute. And the 94th Academy Awards set for March 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC. The race is on to catch up on every nominated film over the next few weeks. So this is a Variety link written by Zach Scharf. You can go and check out the full list of all of the nominees. It looks like it might be in alphabetical order. Yep. Feel free to go over to Variety. You can follow the link that's in the chat. You can follow the link that's going to be on the ohmTown.com site. You can follow the link wherever you find this video or podcast. This next article is in the Word and Tech channel, and it's about Google's Nest doorbell. For context, I had this doorbell before. It actually lost its protective coating in the sun and would shut down in the cold. And my weather isn't particularly bad, it doesn't get into the negatives. But it says, has your Google Nest doorbell been draining its battery faster than normal or stopped working altogether, even when hooked up to your doorbell wires? Yes. And I actually got rid of it and swapped it out for a competitor. That's because it doesn't like being left out in the cold. A new support page published this week by Google confirms that Google's newest smart video doorbell, the Google Nest doorbell battery, and its Google Nest Cam battery can't charge at temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. For me, it was other issues. It wasn't a battery issue. There was something else going on with mine. And the update comes on the heels of complaints by users in the Google Nest forum that their Nest doorbells were draining their batteries faster than normal this winter. And that's actually pretty common for batteries in general, as far as I understand it. This is an article over on The Verge, and it's written by Jennifer Pattison Toohey. And batteries tend to drain faster in the cold, and there are other issues associated with it in the heat. If they are being used, they heat up faster in the heat because they don't have the ability to have a heat sink drain that heat off. But their batteries are being consumed, and heat is the bane of existence for electronics in general. It's easier to protect against the cold with heat than it is to try and protect a heated electronic item with something cold. You have to have some active cooling, like a water cooler or fans. And that would have just drained the battery on this device even faster than the cold, I would think. Well, anyway, you can go over to The Verge and read more about it. But if you are having problems with your Google Nest doorbell, hopefully you now know what might be the problem if you were considering looking into it. It could be that the cold is draining your battery. I've switched to a completely different device altogether. I use Ubiquiti devices now. Okay, so the next article is in the Mobile channel. Study finds unemployed young men have criminal records. I clicked on this simply because of that title and the snippet that says more than half of unemployed American men in their 30s have a history of being arrested or convicted of a crime, a stigma that poses a barrier to them participating in the nation's labor force, according to a Rand Corporation study. I think that is an astonishing amount of criminality. So this is an article from Rand published on phys.org, and it says, study finds most unemployed young men have criminal records. Well, first off, I have a problem with referring to somebody in their 30s as young men. That's, I don't know, that's a little bit too far afield to be young men. Those are men. And it says by age 35, 64% of unemployed men have been arrested and 46% have been convicted of a crime. This is unemployed American men in their 30s. Are you kidding me? There's nobody in my chat. I'm basically just talking into the recording, but that's fine. Maybe somebody will stumble across the VOD or the podcast or the YouTube channel and talk to me about this. This article, it was published by the journal Science Advances, suggests that employment services should focus more on the special challenges facing the unemployed who have criminal history records. But it says by age 35, I'm going to repeat that. By age 35, 64% of unemployed men have been arrested and 46% have been convicted of a crime, with the rates varying only slightly by race and ethnicity. That can't be right. That just can't be right. Rand researchers estimated the number of unemployed young men with criminal histories by using information from the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth 1997, which follows a nationally representative group of Americans over the course of their lives. Researchers examined responses from a group of about 9,000 participants who initially were recruited in 1997 and were born during the years 1980 through 1984. And the study examined the involvement of men with the criminal justice system through 2017. Wow. Okay. Well, this is an interesting article and one that I will have to send off to a couple of other people to see if I'm missing something from this, because like I say periodically in my shows, I don't read the entirety of the article on the air. I read the snippet, draw attention to this article, about this article, to those who are watching or going to watch it wherever the show ends up and wherever they find it. I'm more interested in stoking curiosity and discussing it and driving some conversation than just me reading it. And finally, the last article of the day is in the Mobile channel. Scientists obtained first high-resolution 3D image of muscle protein nebulin. I picked this because I was really curious about what they did and how they did the high-resolution image of muscle protein nebulin. And it's kind of entertaining when you find out later that they don't really know. Researchers don't really know everything about nebulin and even refer to it as nebulous. So this article says scientists have obtained the first high-resolution 3D image of nebulin, a giant actin-binding protein that is an essential component of skeletal muscle. Basically it allows these parts to slide against each other, and it acts as a foundation for muscle and muscle, like heart muscle. So I'm gonna click this link and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Skeletal and heart muscles contract and relax upon sliding of parallel filaments of the proteins myosin and actin. Nebulin, another long, slender protein which is present only in skeletal muscle, pairs up with actin, stabilizing and regulating it. Mutations in the gene encoding nebulin can produce an abnormal nebulin that causes Nemeline myopathy, an incurable neuromuscular disorder with varying degrees of severity, from muscle weakness to speech impediments and respiratory problems. It all depends on where the nebulin that has mutated or wobbled shows up. And because it's such a fine element of the human condition, it's hard to resolve that. It's hard to find it as the problem and hard to fix it. It's basically impossible to fix it, at least right now. Well, they visualize these proteins directly in their native environment, the muscle, by using a powerful microscopy technique called electron cryotomography. Basically, you freeze it and slice it and look at it. It says, then scientists they begin with a flash freezing of the muscle sample and then apply a gallium-based ion beam, basically scanning it and looking at it in high resolution, which allows them to actually see the structure of it and see maybe there is a physical problem with it from its expected view to what it really is in situ. So I think that stuff like this is really fascinating. It allows us to look at the inner workings of, at this point, human or of animals. We could probably do this in a heartbeat, so to speak. Pun not intended. It just slips out sometimes. And this article is over on phys.org and was written by the Max Planck Society. I'm not sure of all of the authors that are involved in it, but it is Max Planck researchers that produced it. So I urge you to go over to phys.org and check it out. And here's the link in chat. And I think that's what we're going to end with today. I really appreciate you sitting in chat if you are in my chat and listening to it as a podcast or listening or watching it on ohmTown.com. I appreciate you giving me your time, and I hope that you enjoy the show, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming.